We're glad to be back meeting in person for this book fest. Writers from all over Louisiana writers, incredible authors here. Not only the stories they tell, the stories they put in writing, from kids' books to politics. There's a little flavor here of everything, and I'm just glad to see so many people out here enjoying the great writers of Louisiana. We've got a lot of kids' activities. We're even going to have a booth here to talk about the state parks, about Keep Louisiana Beautiful. So anything we can have a positive spin on Louisiana today, we want people to come out, visit the writers, buy some books, and just have a good time. We're excited every year to give out an award. Really some of the incredible writings they're able to put out for the world to see and enjoy, stories right here from Louisiana.
In this book, 21st Century Southern Writers, there are 19 chapters or essays, each on a different writer. And 11 of the 19 authors in the book have appeared at the Louisiana Book Festival, and including 3 authors from Louisiana, Barb Johnson from Lake Charles and New Orleans, and Skip Horrick from Baton Rouge, and our recipient today, David Armand from Hammond. This book is being featured at the festival today, and there's a program on the schedule for that. In Dixon Hearn's essay on David, called In Your Heart, he writes, "One common feature in all his work links it inextricably to that of Southern writers such as Flannery O'Connor, William Faulkner, Cormac McCarthy, and I'm adding Eudora Welty, the use of Southern settings to deal with distinctly American and even universal themes. And that his work, much like Harry Crews, Larry Brown, Tom Franklin, and Ron Rash, and I'm adding William Gay, attempts to use place as a sort of character in and of itself, all to show the influence of a particular geography on the people who inhabit it, especially those of blue-collar, lower middle-class backgrounds. David, born and raised in Louisiana, has worked as a drywall hanger, a draftsman, and a press operator in a flag printing factory. And look at him now. He's an assistant professor of creative writing at Southeastern Louisiana University, and David is the 23rd recipient of the Louisiana Writer Award in recognition of his outstanding contributions to Louisiana's literary and intellectual life, exemplified by his body of work. He's the author of 4 novels, all set in Louisiana, 3 volumes of poetry, The Evangelist, just published this month, a memoir where you can learn even more about him, and a collection of creative nonfiction essays coming this spring from our state's own University of Louisiana at Lafayette Press. But I want to share this in the voice of Jack Bedell, 2017-19 Louisiana Poet Laureate, upon learning David would be receiving this award today. He said, "Whether I'm speaking from my own perspective as a former teacher, his friend, his faculty colleague, a fellow husband and father, or another South Louisiana author, I am here to tell you David Armand is a treasure. Both in his writing and in his life, David is driven by honesty and hope. His memoirs, poems, and works of fiction lean heavily into these 2 themes, but they never blink in the face of hard times, nor do they shy away from the work it takes to persevere through those trials on the way to salvation. It's rare to find a writer or a human being capable of being an honest example of that struggle. David Armand is that writer and that person, and I'm very proud we are celebrating him for his accomplishments and for the person he is." And back to Dixon's essay. Like all literature that aspires to transcend its genre and its place, Armand uses this distinct southern setting of southeast Louisiana to wrestle with the universal theme of one's constant and hopeful search for human connection. The closing line of his poem, Mischief, expresses that idea succinctly. Until someone stops them, says, "Come here, son, I love you." That hope, or something quite like it, sustains us all. David, we all love you, and we are so proud that you are our 2022 Louisiana Writer Award recipient. Lieutenant Governor.
I learned in presenting this award today that the first Louisiana Writer Award in 2000 was a late Ernest Gaines. And as he set the standards for excellence in all of the Louisiana Writer Awards who will follow, it's only fitting that his growth as a writer today, you had the privilege of introducing Ernest Gaines at a previous book fest, I learned. So that's pretty neat that you got to introduce him being the first one to receive this award. But in the tradition of excellence among Louisiana writers continues, on behalf of the Louisiana Center for the Book, the State Library System, and the Department of Recreation and Tourism, it's my honor as Lieutenant Governor to present to you the 23rd Louisiana Writers Award to David Armand, a true son of Louisiana that has that love and passion that so many others before you have. So it's a great honor to be here and recognize you for the work you've done. So I think I'm supposed to give you this award now. Jim, get up here.
Originally, I was expecting that there was going to be a deluge outside while I was doing this. So I had like kind of written that into my speech, but now there's no rain. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here to help me and all of us to celebrate the written word and our shared love of books and their unique magic and their indescribable significance. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Nungesser, for your tireless work in promoting our state's rich and beautiful culture. And thank you, Robbie Wilson, who I don't see, but I know Robbie's busy. And all the folks at the State Library of Louisiana and the Louisiana Center for the Book, especially Jim Davis, who has been so incredibly supportive and kind to me over the years. And Jim, I'll never forget, for as long as I live, the day that you called me a couple of months ago now to tell me that I was the recipient of this award. We had a long conversation, I remember, and I wasn't even sure why you'd called at first. But after telling me about some of the festival's feature this year and how thrilled you were for it to be returning in person after 2 very long years, you started to mention how you'd be needing someone to interview the Louisiana Writer Award recipient. And I remember you said, we'll need a good interviewer, and we'll need someone who really knows our honoree well and who can do a good job. So at that point I was fully expecting for you to ask me to interview the winner, which I would have happily done. And I would have been honored to do it. But then you said, we'll need somebody really good this time because the person that's being interviewed is you. And you said, David, you're the winner of the 2022 Louisiana Writer Award. And so I sat down, actually I more like collapsed down I was in my bedroom on my cell phone, and so there's this little wooden chest in front of my bed, and I just kind of collapsed onto that. And then I said, the only thing I could think of that could come out of my mouth, and I somehow still remember saying it, I said, come on, Jim. I thought he was playing a prank on me. And he said, no, David, you're our winner this year. And after that, I just sat there probably, to me it seemed about like 5 minutes, but I cried. and poor Jim had to repeat himself a few times to, I was like, so say this again. I'm the winner of the award this year. And so he patiently repeated himself for me, and kind of got choked up with me a little bit. And so it was a good phone call to get. And so thank you again for just being patient as I processed the news over the phone. I just can't imagine a better call to receive, and not a better person to receive a call like that from. My goal was always to write a story that Tim Gotra is going to like. And so I remember right before I graduated, I turned in a story about a girl who wears a back brace because she has scoliosis. And one day this kid who she's friends with, a young man, comes over to her house, and she takes the back brace off, and she says, "Do you want to look at it?" And it sounds creepy, and it kind of is creepy, but so she takes it off and sets it down, and when she goes to the bathroom, the boy puts the back brace on and tries it on to kind of get the feel of how it feels. And so it obviously an homage in a way to Flannery O'Connor's Bible salesman stealing the wooden leg and running away down the cornfield. But it was the first story that I wrote that earned Tim's unconditional, or almost unconditional approval, because he still had some things to say about it. But what I didn't tell him, though, was that actually happened to me. I knew a girl in junior high who had scoliosis, and she lived right down the road from me. She and I had grown up since kindergarten, and then one day she just stopped coming to school, and I didn't really know why. And she wouldn't care that I'm telling you all this because I wrote about it, and that, I'll kind of explain that a little in a minute. But so anyway, I didn't try on her back brace, but I remember seeing it and being kind of interested in it and looking at it and touching it. It was like made out of this like rubbery kind of plastic, and it was brown, and it was just, it's like it's something you don't really see all the time. But my point in saying all that is that I took Tim Gotra's advice and I wrote what I knew. That was something that happened to me, and I knew about it, and so I wrote about it. And it made the writing feel authentic, I guess, because and I remember, I still have this email, and I almost printed it out to read from it, but I just remember the way he wrote it. He said, "This is the best thing you've written so far." And it was great because that was the last thing that I had it was going to turn into him, so that was good. And then he said, he's like, "You do this well, you do this well, you can fix this part." He's like, "But it's that back brace." And that's how he ended the email. He said, "It's the back brace." And that was the end. He didn't say, "All best, Dr. Gotra," or nothing. It was just like, "It's the back brace." And but it told, I know he's really into like mechanics and machinery and like things like that. But I think what he probably sensed in this story was that sense of realism. And it was because I was writing about something that actually happened or that I was familiar with. I want to thank my family, my friends, all my colleagues at work, and also to my students. My students teach me new stuff every day, and I tell them I have the best job in the world because I can learn more. They keep me young, and I never want to be that person who just stops learning. And teaching is the greatest way that you can continue to learn. All the readers, writers, librarians, booksellers, all I ask is that you please don't ever stop what you're doing. And my promise is that I won't stop what I'm doing either. So that's my promise to you. So thank you all very much for being here and listening to me. It's such an honor. And now I believe it is real because my name is on that thing and I can see it. And so it's real. So thank y'all so much, and go enjoy the rest. And it looks like the rain might not hit us, so this will be good. Thought I can't possibly be getting this award, especially knowing all the other people who are more than deserving of the award, and I just feel completely honored and completely just blown away. And especially when I look at all the other people who have gotten it before me, it still hasn't quite hit me. Even though now I physically have the award, it still hasn't quite hit me, but I think it'll settle in. It's just matter of processing the news. Yeah.
It's great to be here at the Louisiana Book Festival. You know, they haven't been able to have it with COVID the last 2 years, so it's great to see everybody coming back out. And so I'm reading my book called Abandoned in the Mansion. It's the beginning of a series of Abandoned in the Mansion, and this is about Bandit moves to the mansion. So it talks about him and leaving the small town of Roseland, the country, and coming to the big city, and what's that like. And so I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to read to the children and adults.
What's your feeling about this year's book festival?
Great. Got a little rain today, but it's going to pick back up. I'm excited to walk out and see who's all the different authors that are out here, so from all around Louisiana. So excited to be here and talk about the importance of literacy among our children. You know, we know that when there's more books in the home, it really can change the trajectory of a child's path. And so we really need to encourage more of our children to read. And so by being here and parents bringing their children out is so important. And we appreciate all the people who are coming out today, even in the rain.
I also oversee another IMLS funded program called the National Student Poets Program. And they all 5 of them happen to be here this year to present, to share their work and talk about what their upcoming year of service is going to be. They were chosen among, I think, 19,000 applicants.
19,000 entries?
Yeah. So they're very remarkable juniors and seniors in high school, and so they've been appointed at the White House last month. Dr. Jill Biden was there to give them their pins and to kind of set them off on their year of service. And so this is part of their year of service, is to bring poetry to the community and bring their gifts to the community. This is a rather large venue for them to do it, but they're also going out into the farther reaches of the country to bring poetry and make it accessible.
This is a seminar for youth poets, and I'm a 2022 National Student Poet for the Southeast region, and I'm coming here today to speak on a panel and read some poetry and share the work of the art.
How did you get involved in poetry?
Starting in kindergarten, when I first started to write, my school was heavily influencing with poetry and got me to start writing poetry at an extremely young age. And so that's really where it blossomed, and from there I just continued writing poetry throughout elementary school before I was then accepted into the creative writing department, where I now go to school at Charleston County School of the Arts.
What do you like about poetry, and what inspires you?
What inspires me most is definitely the outdoors and nature. What I love about poetry is the flexibility of poetry and how the writer can do whatever they want with poetry, whether they want it to be in a form of an apple or prose poetry. It really does not matter, and it's up to the writer.
What would you say to young people about getting interested in poetry?
I would say don't start reading Shakespeare. Start reading poetry you can understand, and poetry that's a little bit more exciting for newer readers.
Hi, I'm a senior from Seattle, and I got involved in poetry in middle school around 7th grade when my English teacher introduced it to us.
What do you like about poetry?
I love how it's probably one of the most accessible forms because it's short, so every single word has to be really thoughtfully considered in the entirety of the piece.
What inspires you to write poetry?
I would say my grandfather. He's a man who's very loving about literature, and he really instilled that in me since a young age.
What do you think about this young poet group?
I think everyone is so amazing. The staff are all incredibly supportive, and my fellow poets are just truly inspiring to me as both people and as poets as well.
Our session today is a celebration of the 10th anniversary of Narrative 4, which is an international youth story exchange that was founded in Aspen about 10 years ago. We bring students together from areas of conflict or areas of difference. We have projects and centers in Israel and Palestine, in Africa, in northern and in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and throughout the United States and Mexico as well. And our idea or our mission is to have students tell their stories to other students to create empathy. And we are committed to the idea and believe in the idea that conflict resolution is most effective when we sort of jumpstart empathy in young people.
What kind of response have you seen so far?
Oh, it's been a wonderful response. We've engaged students throughout the United States, throughout the world, and we've met in Louisiana twice for our annual summits, and both times, it was really wonderful, to see students from Nigeria and Belfast and Jerusalem talking together and breaking bread together and just having a grand time.
Hi, I'm your Louisiana Poet Laureate, Mona Lisa SALOY. I'm the Conrad N. Hilton Endowed Professor of English at Dillard University. I'm also a Louisiana Folklife Commissioner, so I'm a folklorist, poet, and scholar. And as your Louisiana Poet Laureate, it's been very interesting. I get to visit a lot of places around the state and encourage people to tell their stories. We have such a unique culture. We were the original westward expansion of America, and so we have cultures. But we need our human history, what happens between the massive dates of important features and trials. So who are we? And so I need everybody to tell their stories, and that's my job, to encourage people to literally write poetry, tell their stories. The other side of that for today, Jericho Brown is my former student, and he calls me his poetry mom sometimes, so it really touches me. But he's a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, many awards, the Whiting Award, many. I'm so proud of him. So we're going to have a conversation about poetry, about his life as a poet, mine, how we kind of met probably and worked together. But I'm so thankful that he's passing it on, that he was gifted from the start. I just had open eyes and saw it and encouraged him and fostered him as I was fostered by my mentors. So I'm thankful that he's passing it on.
She was a good teacher because she listened. She believed that no matter what, there was always a poem somewhere in there, and she had the ear for hearing where the poem was, even in a mess of text.
Wow. So how long have you been writing?
I've been writing since I was a kid. It's all I ever wanted to do.
So you were 5?
Yeah, I guess as soon as I learned to write, I was trying to write
Really?
rhymes. When I was a very, very little kid, I figured out that words rhymed, and I would just make these lists of words that rhymed, and my mom would hang the lists on the refrigerator.
My name is Keith Plessy. I am a first cousin, 3 generations removed from Homer Plessy, plaintiff in the Plessy versus Ferguson case of 1896. His significance to civil rights history is important to New Orleans, Louisiana, and the country. The ruling in Plessy v. Ferguson resulted in separate but equal, but as a result, there were several civil rights icons that came out of that era that were part of that movement and spread out around the country to continue the message. Today's, we're actually coming here to honor the author of Together, Amy Nathan, who wrote the book using our lives, Phoebe Ferguson and myself. Of course, we have come together as Plessy and Ferguson, and to flip the script on Plessy versus Ferguson. And we formed a foundation, Plessy and Ferguson Foundation.
And what is the goal of that foundation?
The goal of our foundation is to spread the message of equality, justice, reconciliation, and to honor civil rights.
My name is Cassandra De Alba. I'm part of the Traveling Poetry Emporium. We are a team of typewriter poets who travel around the country writing custom poems.
How did you get involved in this?
My friend Jenna, who's part of the team, actually taught me how to do it at my kitchen table.
How long have you been writing poetry?
Writing poetry since I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. Doing this probably 6 or 7 years, 8. Time flies.
What's the difference between writing a poem which you have an open-ended time frame and doing one on demand like you're doing here today?
This doesn't really leave room for errors, you know. You got to get it right in the first go on a typewriter. I don't have a backspace key. So you got to make sure every word you're putting down is close to correct as possible.
Tell us, what poem are you going to write now?
I'm going to write you a poem about the Louisiana Book Fest.
That didn't take you too long to write up that poem. Let's hear it.
All right, this is called Believe in Books. Words wait on the page to weave their way into your heart, ready to pump along with your blood from the tips of your fingers to the soles of your feet, and suddenly you are dancing along with everybody else in this library, in the Capitol, under the tents, on this rain-soaked Baton Rouge Saturday, all of you alive with the rhythm of your love of words.
A poem in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's what we do.
What's it like typing on this typewriter?
I'm used to it. Definitely takes a little more energy in your hands than on a computer keyboard. It's a little hard on your wrists after a while.
What do you think of the Louisiana Book Festival?
Oh, I love it. I'm so happy to be back here.
Well, I'm giving free caricatures to the kids for Pelican Publishing. Yeah, so they're, free. It's fun. Be here all day doing that. I've been an artist. I've been drawing caricatures since high school, and it didn't take too long to learn how to do it. I had my father was interested in helping me do that. I used to do this at the Alexandria Mall. And I'm a graphic designer and illustrator as well. I've illustrated 8 books for Pelican over the years and some book covers. And at the book festival, I come out and do caricatures for the kids.
That's how good it is. Good morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We've got authors autographing books, personalizing, unique sign, dedicated.
There we go.
This is the LSU printmaking, papermaking, and bookbinding tent. We like to have the students come out and explain what they do on a larger scale at LSU. But the students make paper with this general public. We have some cotton paper in vats over here, as well as they're making pamphlets and doing a pamphlet stitch. The students are also doing linoleum carving and printing those in a relief manner. So we have brought down our little etching press, and we like to tell this general public about the kinds of art activities that we do at LSU so that they can better appreciate the arts.
What kind of response have you had so far?
Great. It's a little cloudy today, but it's picking up, and there's lots of printed t-shirts, handmade books. Some are either bound in leather. Come out, take a look. The festival is great. We do this every year because we like to interface with the community.
My name is Karis Rogers. I am the CEO of Flexing in My Complexion and now new author of my new children's book, Shine Bright, published by HarperCollins. My clothing line is a non-bullying campaign. I started it because I was being bullied for my dark skin complexion. So I wanted to create something that would inspire other young kids and adults to love themselves and to be who they are. And also my book, Shine Bright, it touches on colorism and racism. And because, it starts young as a kid, feeling like you have no self-esteem in yourself, no self-confidence, and trying to uplift them and letting them know that they're not alone in any situation that they're going through.
What kind of response have you had so far today?
I've had a great response. We're doing so well. I'm super excited to be here, and I think people are enjoying my new book, Shine Bright.
What is your message to young people?
My message to young people is that it doesn't matter what other people think of you, only what you think of yourself, and that you should always love yourself no matter what, because you are that girl, you are that boy, period.
I drove here from Covington. I'm a teacher at Mandeville High, and the last time I went to a book festival, it was in Florida, and I met my favorite author and found what was my favorite book, so I'm hoping to find a new favorite book.
What do you think of the festival so far?
Oh, it's amazing. We already spent way more money than we planned on some amazing local children's books.
Come back next year?
Absolutely. I'll be back next year.
I brought my mother-in-law and my son here, and we come here. Like last year, I think it's very interesting, and so this year I brought them here too. So we want to see some new books and borrow some books or buy some books.
What's your favorite part of the festival?
I think the favorite part maybe the game for the main library, from the main library part. I think they just roll the spin the plate and then ask questions and then some kind of interesting questions.
It's a great event just to meet a lot of authors and look at all the books that they brought and see what they had going on today.
What's your favorite part so far?
We saw several authors speak inside the library here, and then they've all been out signing as well under the tent. So seeing the books that they've made plus having them sign it has been a cool experience.
You coming back next year?
Yes, definitely.
This is my very first one. I was invited to give a talk last night on diversity in publishing, and I stayed over to come check out the festival.
Tell us, what do you think of the festival so far, and what's your favorite part?
I'm so excited. This is so awesome. I didn't know, and I'm really glad that I found out. I just got a bag of books. I'm really excited about some books that I got that are in French on 19th century African Creoles.
This is my granddaughter, Faye, and she has a button that says, "Don't be afraid to stand out." And we also got all this great stuff from upstairs, face painting, coloring. Show them your ornament, Faye. Oh my goodness, it's great here.
What do you think of the festival?
Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful so far, and I'm so glad it's overcast, but it's not raining. So you need to come on down.
This is my first time at this festival, and I came to bring my daughter to buy books.
What do you think of the festival so far?
Oh, it's a nice festival, real nice festival.
I love books and the books.
Have you bought some books?
No, actually, I'm gonna go get a French book because I'm learning French.
What do you think of the festival?
Oh, it's really fun. I got to take a picture with a dog, and I really enjoyed it.
I wrote The Hush Sisters, and it's a story about two sisters who have been estranged for a while, for a couple of years since one of their parents died, and now the second parent has died. And the older sister has come home from Toronto. I'm from Canada. The older sister has come home from Toronto, where she's a TV producer with a great career, to St. John's, Newfoundland, which is where I'm from originally. It's a relatively small city. And so the second parent has died and left them this large house, which has ghosts, which is haunted. But of course, the ghosts always represent something a little bit more than just a ghost. And so they need to decide what to do with this house. It's a burden and it's an opportunity at the same time. So the younger sister wants to keep it, but she can't afford to keep it. She just has a mediocre job that doesn't pay very well. And the older sister wants to sell the house because she just lost her job in Toronto. So there's a clash between them, but they need to come together. They haven't been together for a while. The ghosts represent the past, and this is sort of the rise of the repressed feelings and memories that they've had. But have gone unspoken for a long time, and now they need to confront them or lose each other. I have a PhD in ghost literature. It's actually American Gothic literature, mostly literature of the South. And so I think all of this sort of came together in my thoughts about these two sisters. It wasn't going to be a ghost story at first, but when I realized that the sisters have inherited this house, as I was writing, I came to realize one day there are ghosts. And of course, and having done all of the study, of course, over the many decades and centuries of ghost writing, of ghost stories, I realized it's never just about ghosts. It's never just about the house being haunted. It's about the relationship being haunted. And also, my hometown of St. John's, Newfoundland, it's an interesting place with a lot of character, a lot of old houses. And I just thought this was the perfect setting for a ghost story. And so that really was the incentive for writing it.
The book is The Bald Eagle, The Improbable Journey of America's Bird, and it's a cultural and natural history of the bald eagle. Essentially, the book looks at both our, meaning Americans, our relationship historic relationship with bald eagles, but it also talks a lot about the species itself, the biological species.
Whatever led you to write this book on the bald eagle?
Well, I'm an environmental writer, and as you know, a lot of environmental writing is doom and gloom, and I thought readers might like a change from that. And there's plenty of doom and gloom, there's plenty of grim and tragic in the story of the bald eagle, but there's also redemption, and there's a great success story. We pushed the bald eagle to the brink of extinction twice, and we brought it back. And in numbers that probably equal what they were when the first Europeans came to North America. And so I wanted to tell the story about this great success, tell the story of this great success of the comeback of the bald eagle. But also we're seeing in them numbers that we didn't see them 10, 20 years ago. And people love them, and they get so excited about bald eagles. I call it a poke the guy in the ribs next to you excitement when we see a bald eagle crossing the sky. So I thought readers might like to know a little bit about this bird that they're seeing more of.
And we are an artist-driven organization. I also am a writer and activist, so I do a lot of other work and have a new book out. This year, a collection of short stories as well as a collection of essays that's coming out next year. But my primary function here really is to talk about what we do at Narrative 4 and how we bring artists into the conversation, into some of the most significant conversations that are going on in the country today. And in the world, actually, because we're an international nonprofit. So we center all of our work on the story exchange, which I like to think of in terms of the way that we, in our own families and friend groups, have people we may not necessarily agree with, but we are very, we're forgiving with. We're forgiving of. We're forgiving of them because we know something about them. And we don't extend that same courtesy to strangers. We don't extend the same courtesy to some random person we meet because we don't know anything about them. And human beings, I think, find their compassionate selves when they know something about someone. So even after we finish this interview, I'm going to feel a little differently about you, and you're probably going to feel a little differently about me because we know a little bit more about each other. You're not just somebody with a mic. And so we don't have time to make those kinds of friendships or familial relationships with everybody. But a story exchange, the minute you exchange and you tell someone a story about something that's important to you in your life, something changes, and you suddenly you feel like this person, you're carrying that person in some way, and you're not going to treat them badly, you're not going to judge them quite as harshly. So that kind of is a foundational practice over everything that we do. So our goal is not necessarily to direct conversations, but to encourage them and to say that it is safe to have one, that it is safe to have a conversation with someone with whom you might have very divergent opinions on. And artists in general, I think, we don't take the status quo for granted. Nothing is ever as it is. If we see a bus going down the road one way, we can make the bus turn around and go another way, because when we write, we can change that story. So artists, I think, are always reimagining. And so we bring those artists into conversation with kids and young people in general, in high schools, but also universities, but also organizations that reach out to us and say, could you come do something?
Do you compile the stories?
No, because I think the most important thing is that it's happening between two people and something changes between those two people. So we don't store the stories, we don't share them outside. It's within the story exchange, it stays in the room. The person who hears the story and the people in the room who hear the story, they can carry it, but we don't record, we don't, like StoryCorps does that, which is a great thing to do, but we don't do that because our practice and premise is that the intimacy of the exchange is what makes a difference.
Well, the greatest democracy in the world is storytelling, right? And everyone has a story to tell. It goes across borders, across boundaries, and if you want to shatter stereotypes and take down prejudices, you can do it through the telling of a story. But what we ask them to do is to tell somebody else's story. So and that's the sort of magic formula that creates this deeply empathetic, deeply grounded territory where young people not only get to tell their own story, but they tell the story of somebody else. And in telling the story of somebody else, what happens is that their universe gets shifted, their world gets bigger, the lungs of the world sort of around them expand in this extraordinary way. And so through Narrative 4, through schools, and teachers are my heroes as well as poets, yes, but teachers and students and artists all coming together to create a network that's now in 22 countries around the world and expanding. So we're here to celebrate our 10th anniversary, and one of our founding members, who's Daryl. And
how did this vision get started?
It got started through the vision of a woman by the name of Lisa Consiglio, who brought a whole load of artists together in Colorado almost exactly 10 years ago, and she knew that artists had a way to sort of access young people, but also that reading was on the decline. And how was it that we can use artists to initiate stories amongst young people, to get them to tell their own stories, and then also to create a difference on the ground. The very first group of people she brought together, in fact, were from New Orleans and Haiti. A school in New Orleans, a school in Haiti. The common denominator there being a natural disaster around which they were going to tell stories to one another. What we realized then when this happened was the incredible links that were created by young people talking to one another, and also what change can occur, and also just little things about geography and distance and languages and all these wonderful things that were available to us through the storytelling. And Lisa decided that she would bring a group of her favorite artists and friends and together to come start to tell stories to one another. We had this magical moment where with Toby Wolfe and Ishmael Bea and Darrell Burke and several Terry Tempest Williams, several other significant writers got together, and we told one another stories. And it was one of those nuclear moments when you feel like you've tapped into an original energy. And we knew that we'd have to take it out into the world.
I love coming to the Louisiana Book Festival. The last time I was here was about 5 years ago with a book of fiction. And this year I came to be on a panel and to talk about a little bit about my book, Economy Hall, The Hidden History of the Free Black Brotherhood.
Wow, tell us a little bit about that book.
That book traces a group of men in New Orleans, an organization that started in 1836 and it lasted until 1948 on one block in Treme. So it's nonfiction.
And where did you get this idea? I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, but why this one?
Well, this book actually came to me because my father's friend was one of the last members of the Société d'Économie, the Economy Society, the people who built Economy Hall. So he actually got the journals of the society for 100 years, put them in the closet, and they sat there for about 50 more years until I went back and read them.
Wow, what did you learn?
What I learned was that there was a lot of history in that downtown community that has not really been discovered or written about or has been erased, because these men in this organization were active in the Reconstruction politics. They had voter registration in Economy Hall in the 1860s, 5 years before the 1870 amendment. They got involved in the suffrage movement. They had opera in concerts, Philharmonic, all of this happened in Economy Hall.
Wow, it must have really opened your eyes to what was going on so long ago.
It did, it did. It showed me how things happen and how things disappear.
Well, I'm Maurice Ruffin. I'm an author of 2 books, a novel and a short story collection. My most recent book is a group of short stories called The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You. It came out about a year ago. And I'm here to talk about that and read some pieces for the audiences.
Wow. Well, what has surprised you the most about being an author?
You know, I think that when you're an author, it forces you to pay more attention to the world around you. I love Louisiana, I love New Orleans, and I love to do research, find out about what people's lives were like in the past, and then apply my fiction techniques to bring those past people to life in a very rich and realistic way.
So kind of like recreating the past.
Oh, totally. And it's so much fun. I just wrote a book that's set in the 1840s that's going to come out in a couple of years. And I didn't know anything about that period before I wrote the book. And I did the research, and now I feel like I can see it when I'm walking around the French Quarter or walking around the city of New Orleans in general.
Wow. What did you learn?
Well, I learned one of the weirdest things is that a lot of the buildings are the same buildings, for example. So the people change, but the landscape doesn't change that much. So for the character in my book, her name is Adi. A-D-Y. I can see her in this townhouse right off of the St. Louis Cathedral, the square, and the building's the same, the sidewalks are the same, the street is the same, the church is in the same spot, and it just makes me understand how connected we are through time. 120 years is nothing, 150 years is nothing.
But that's not always true everywhere.
That's right. New Orleans
is special.
It saves so much of its past for the present. It's a gift to us in the present.
Wow. What made you become an author?
I like people. I like to understand people. And I think that communities need authors. We are the people who sort of hold the mirror up to our family and our friends, and we say, hey, this is who we are. And I think if you don't have people who are creating stories, we feel kind of lost. And so I think for me, it's a service to my community to be an author.
I just came out with my first book that's been out for less than a month, and they wrote me an email and asked me to attend. I'm a new Louisiana resident as of a year ago, so.
Wow.
I know. And my first book.
What was it, Louisiana that inspired you, or what happened?
I always say it's New Orleans that conjured it. You know how New Orleans has that special magic.
A little bit of voodoo.
Yeah, a little bit of voodoo got me a little bit of a book deal. So it was out of the blue. I wrote a blog piece for someone, and then the publisher contacted me, and they're like, we want you to write this book. I mean, we want you to do it in 6 months.
Wow.
I know, right?
What do you do under that circumstance? Did you like just sit down and go write, or what did you do?
Well, I had been teaching the class about the book for about 3 years, so that gave me a rough outline, and I had to do a quick storyboard because I'm a visual person, and you just have, you do have to just write. They're like, we need 1 to 2 chapters every 14 days, and so you get in this rhythm and you go a little crazy, like you really, have weird writer hours, and you're up till sunrise sometimes, and lots of tears and lots of coffee and lots of stretching, but I got it done.
This original story that got this interest.
I'm an herbalist, and I've been an herbalist since I was probably 2 or 3 years old. I had no idea you could do it as a living, that people just wanted to listen to you talk about using plants and plant medicine and folk. I'm from North Carolina originally. So it was just something I always did, and I love, and my book is about African American herbalism, which is often a point of view in herbalism that's not as much written about. So it was that led me to the book deal. It's just I've been writing and lecturing about folk medicine of the South. I love studying the South. I came down to Louisiana to research for a different book, and then ended up writing this book.
But you ended up living here.
I know.
How did that happen?
The Mississippi River is what I tell a lot of people. New Orleans just snatched my heart. I mean, it's just the people, the food, the culture, everything about it just, and it was during the pandemic, and I felt like I needed something, and everything just opened up, and now I can't leave.
Is this your first book?
This is my first book.
The book that brought me to the Louisiana Book Festival to this time, been here a number of times, was a book called Late City, which is set in New Orleans at the opening of the book. A man who is 115-year-old begins to die as the book opens. And 70,000 of the 76,000 words in the book are told in the nanosecond of his death.
Oh my.
And a major character in the book is God themselves. And don't make any assumptions. This is an unusual God, as you will find. But this man was born and raised upriver from Baton Rouge, up in Lake Providence. In East Carroll County, and he is the oldest living veteran, or the last veteran of World War I. And the book is about his life growing up. He reviews his life. He becomes a newspaperman in Chicago, witnesses a great many of the events. There's a fair amount of Louisiana scenes in it. He even comes down, and there's a major scene in the book where he interviews Huey Long, and so it's got some strong Louisiana ties, as does all my work.
Are you a journalist at heart?
No. I'm a fiction writer at heart. In fact, my Pulitzer is in fiction. And it was a book written. Well, before I ever began to publish, I was a business journalist in New York City for 12 years. But so I know journalism, but no, it's this has been. I was a Louisianan for about 15 years. I taught in Lake Charles. In the late 80s and into toward the up to 2000.
This story, where did you get this little nugget of an idea?
This nugget of an idea, there is no single opening moment of it, except that I realized as I was about to write the book. Well, I guess there was a nugget. The book takes place 10 minutes after a certain someone has just been elected president in 2016. And I thought somehow that struck me as a potential watershed moment. Now that character does not appear in the book, because the book takes place, as I said. But I wanted to capture America up to that moment because I thought it was all about to go to hell. One of my novels is set in hell, by the way, and I just, back in 2009, I'm sorry I didn't wait till 2023, say, to write that novel. Because there are a lot of people there in 2009 that I had not recognized that there would be even worse to come. So, but I wanted a novel to capture what America was up to that moment, and I realized that someone who was dying would die just then. Could well have fought, just barely, because he's 115, could have fought in World War I. And a lot of what's in my unconscious, this is my 25th book, and a lot of my artistic unconscious, where I write from, has a great many elements in it, but Louisiana is a recurring motif. And so he dies in New Orleans, and an ongoing kind of motif in the book too, as he is dying, is we hear the hospice workers out in the off stage a little bit in the nursing home. And it's all very Louisiana there. And
what is the name of this Louisiana?
It's called Late City. Late City, there was a time, by the way, long ago, when newspapers were actually printed on paper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before the internet, newspaper men, however, newspaper people, felt the need to update. And there were a number of editions published through the day of those daily newspapers. The last edition bearing a given dateline was always called the Late City edition. And this is a lifelong newspaper man, and the recounting of his life, the guided revisiting of his life to figure out who he really was, who he yearned to be, how the United States of America in what was called the American century shaped him. All of that, it comprises really the Late City edition of this guy's life.
Jim approached me. He had seen one of my pieces in 64 parishes, and he contacted me about doing a piece. Well, actually using one of the pieces for the book festival. And I am very much a literacy advocate. I have a little library at my house. I grew up as an avid reader as a child. So I said, instead of you picking one for me from my collection, let me just create one for you. So I created this one for him.
Well, tell us, what was your inspiration behind it?
Well, mostly it was about books and literacy and how that can change your circumstances. It can open up your world. So my figure, it's our Fufale, and she is standing on two alligators and she's holding the book of knowledge. right? And all that comes from it. So it starts off as little buds and it just blows up into these big cotton balls. So it's sort of like, I don't know, just like life blowing up through reading and literacy.
Well, I especially love your Louisiana slant on the whole artwork. Tell us why did you pick what you picked to put in there?
Well, I exclusively work in Louisiana iconology. I grew up in the city and then I moved to St. Rose Parish. During that time, I was to live there, I would have to drive through the swamps to get to Winn-Dixie to just buy milk, right? And so coming from like a situation where there was never like a lot of, you know, swamps or anything, I had no experience with it at all. I just started seeing the swamps change and how beautiful they were. I mean, some points of the year, there's like a carpet of yellow flowers. Or some points of year, it's a carpet of purple flowers. And I felt like so many people, particularly New Orleans, don't see that, even though we're only 20 miles away, right? They don't see that, they don't get to experience that. So it was really important for me to stay indigenous as far as like anything that I put in the art. It's quite an honor. It is an absolute honor. It's been a joy working with the people here. Jim has been fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I really felt like I had something to say. When he approached me about doing this poster, you know, I obviously have an inventory of art that they could have chosen, but I was like, no, I want to do something specifically for this. So this piece took about 3 months to make. Commissions are always kind of tricky because, you know, you never know if someone's going to like it or, you know, and I'm sure they felt the same way, like it's going to be awkward, you know, if we don't like it, right? And he was asking, can we get sneak previews of it? And I said, it's just in pieces all over the place. It's not going to make any sense because it really all comes together at the end. And fortunately, they liked it.
Oh, it's lovely.
And yeah,
of
so
course they would love it.
And yeah, so they've been so kind. It has really been a joy for me to do this.
I've been to other festivals. I've been to the Southern Festival of Books. I've been to Mid-South Book Festival, which I don't think exists anymore. That was in Memphis. But this, and I'm saying this, having lived in Louisiana my whole life, but I still mean it, is the best one by far. I mean, the people here are just so kind, and the community is supportive, and I get to come here and see friends. I get to see people I know or people who I've just met online, but then get to meet them in person here. And you know, and it's cool because my kids, as they've gotten older, they've come here throughout the years with me, and that's always nice to see them be able to kind of experience just this. You know, it's a unique culture, you know, the literary culture, and but here it's a little, just like everything else in Louisiana, it's just a little bit more special.
Well, read with them, right? Read when they're little, read before they're even born, in their womb. You can read to your children, they can hear those sounds, and it's so important because we know that reading really changes a child's life, and we know that also that reading also encourages a lot of different other areas of a child's life, and as far as science and math, and it really stimulates all of those other core subjects that are so important to a child. But we're just really encouraging all parents, all grandparents, caregivers to really read at a very young age.
Well, the crowd, you know, it's overcast. It looks like the rain is going to hold off, and we ought to have a great day.
How can people get more information about this?
LouisianaTravel.com, but you can go to the library website or any of our websites under the Lieutenant Governor's office to learn more about the writers here in Louisiana.